Hi, and welcome to the Frog Pond School of Design, where we like to talk about things that might be of interest to people who might have an interest in architecture. Today I want to talk about the Crystal Palace. If not the Crystal Cathedral, that's in Southern California, but there is a connection, which we'll see shortly. The Crystal Palace was in London. This all started in 1849 when Prince Albert, who was the president of the Royal Society of the Arts and also happened to be married to Queen Victoria, suggested that they host an exhibition and invite people from around the world to come and show off their wares, to strut their stuff, so to speak. Uh, but when they decided to go ahead and do this, they got really ambitious and didn't give themselves a whole lot of time to put things together. This was 1949, and they wanted to open this exhibition in 1951, which meant they had to not only get all the exhibitors lined up and all the other issues associated with something this huge, but they had to design and build an exhibition hall. So they entertained proposals, and there were quite a few of these, but eventually they ended up rejecting all the proposals because they just were either too expensive or too difficult to construct or something. The committee even tried to come up with their own design, but it wasn't well received at all. And finally, a fellow named Joseph Paxton came forward, and we'll learn a little bit more about him later. But they did get this place built. It had to be inexpensive, easy to construct, and it had to be huge. In the end, they had 14,000 exhibitors. And the hall was like almost a million square feet, 23 acres under roof. The exhibition opened on May 1st, 1851, just as they had planned. And Goodyear was there showing some of their products. Of those 14,000 exhibitors, 560 were from the U.S. alone. McCormick was there with their Reaper. Others showed things like artificial limbs, false teeth, chewing tobacco, and even a pistol by the Colt Company. And as it turned out, the hall was so popular that for several years thereafter, other countries hosted similar exhibits, and most of them used a building kind of modeled after the Crystal Palace. And therein comes the Crystal Cathedral in California, as we mentioned. After the exhibit, the building was dismantled and re-erected elsewhere in London, where it stood for a good long time, used for a variety of purposes until like 1939, when it was just pretty much destroyed by a fire. Now, how did all this come about? I mentioned Joseph Paxton, but as I said, the proposals they had, none of them seemed to meet their requirements, and finally Paxton came forward and said he had an idea that just might work. He was not an architect, he was a gardener, a very esteemed gardener, and noted for his garden designs and that sort of thing. But he explained that he had been experimenting with greenhouse construction, and he thought that possibly some cast iron components, rods, and etc., and newly available large sheets of plate glass could do the trick. And they were readily available. They could be mass produced and put together on the site. And that's how it all came about. The result was awe-inspiring. The clear glass was very impressive. And in places, this building was like over 108 feet high, I believe, at its highest point. So it was very impressive, very well received, and as I mentioned, became the model for a lot of other buildings thereafter, to the point where Crystal Palace became more than just the name of a building. It kind of became the name of an architectural style. So that's how a gardener designed one of the most influential buildings in modern architecture history. Hey, thanks for joining us today at the Frog Pond School of Design. I look forward to seeing you hanging around the pond again real soon.